back there.
Call to order the Yreka City Council special meeting slash, I should say, not special meeting, but it was a closed session before this. We will rise and say the Pledge of Allegiance first.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for coming. It's a little scarce tonight. Before we get started, I ask people to silence their cell phones, and then, is Don still online?
Yep.
Oh, there you are. I can hear you. I don't see you again.
He disappeared.
You disappeared. Don has an announcement from closed session.
All right. This is a report out of the closed session that just occurred. There was a motion by Councilmember Baird, seconded by Councilmember Smith Freeman, to authorize the city attorney to file a petition for the appointment of a receiver to abate the nuisance located at 1022 Bluebird Lane, Yreka, California. The motion was unanimously passed with Councilmember McCoy absent.
Great. All right. Thank you, Don. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right, then we will go into, we don't have a order, the public comments. It doesn't say anything specifically, but we will open this up now for public comments. Oh, there we are down here, number 6, way down there. Citizens participation is welcomed and invited to city council meetings. Time is reserved for at each regular meeting for those in the audience who wish to address the city council. The city requests that the person addressing the city council refrain from making personal, slanderous, profane, and disruptive remarks. Public comment is not intended for a question and answer period or conversations with the city council or staff. Council members, when recognized by the mayor, may ask questions of the presenter, but no action may be taken during the city council public comment section of this meeting. Under the Brown Act, the city council is prohibited from discussing or taking action on any item listed on other than on the proposed agenda. Please speak from the podium and go for it.
Lorenzo Love, live on 4th Street. I understand on the upcoming ballot measure to raise the sales tax, the city council intends to write both the pro and the con comments on the ballot. That's an obvious conflict of interest to do that.
Correct. And the only thing I will say on that is we are not going to write that.
Okay, good.
That's all I can't comment anymore on that, but we are not, the council is not going to do that.
Please get there. Okay, Dominic Autry, 4th Street. I was talking to the city manager, and he said to ask you guys if I could be part of the cons written on as a property owner, as a Yreka resident, as a registered voter. I would like my opinion on the ballot, if that is going to be a possibility. And even if it's not, I'm on the record saying that I need to be. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, it will be in consideration. So just so you know.
Is Don still on?
No, I don't think so now. It's something that, just so the council knows, it's something that we were already going to discuss at a later date. I've had this discussion with Jason, and we are going to bring that back for the council to decide that. So.
And I want our attorney in on that.
Yeah, oh, absolutely, absolutely. Okay, is there any other public comments at this point in time? Okay. Great. We will go on to number 8, the consent calendar. All matters under the consent calendar agenda are considered routine and non-controversial and will be enacted on one motion unless any member of the council wishes to remove it an item for discussion. A, approval ratification of payments issued from April 20th, 2022 through May 8th, 2022. B, approval of minutes of the regular meeting held on May 3rd, 2022. C, Cash and fiscal reports, cash reports, balance reports, March 2022, investment report, March 31st, 2022, budget of revenue expenditures with the year-to-date actuals through March 31st, 2022, and fiscal performance reports as of March 31st, 2022. Now we're going to D, approval of transportation claims of the local transportation funds for the fiscal years 2021, 2020, and 2021, and 2021 and 2022, and authorize the mayor to sign the claims on behalf of the city. E, continuation of urgency number 864 fireworks. F, continuation of urgency resolution number 2021-51 remote public meetings. G, waive full text readings on all ordinance on agenda. Ordinance shall be introduced and adopted by title only. Before we get started, I just want to make a comment on the continuation of urgency on the public meetings. Just so you know, Reading, as of right now, actually opened theirs up and went away from the remote public meetings. So just so you know that.
Say that again.
The remote public meetings, they actually opened it back up to the public and went away from remote public hearing meetings. That's just Reading. I just,
So no Zoom.
no Zoom, yeah. That's, reason why I know that is because I just had a meeting with them today and that's what they're doing, so. So that's, I just thought I'd bring that up. So what is the wishes of the council on this, on our consent agenda? And if there's any questions before we go into it.
I move that we accept the consent agenda as presented.
Council Middleton, I will second the motion.
Motion and a second. I will do roll call. Joan Smith Freeman.
Aye.
Corey Middleton.
Aye.
Paul McCoy's absent, I think, still. Is that correct? Paul's still absent? Okay. Debbie Baird.
Aye.
Dwayne Cage, aye. And just so you know, in that public meeting that we had with Reading today too, we as the park PIT committee, we went ahead and still reinstated the teleconference in that way too. So they just did theirs that way, but we still want to keep on going ahead and doing Zoom and stuff.
Right. And I just came back from the League of Cities meeting and most of the cities
Most
in
of
the
theirs
entire
still doing
state are all doing
Yeah,
it. Most of them are doing both.
both, yeah. Yeah. And it's an option you don't have to do, and it's, I think it just opens up more options the way we're doing it as of this time, so. Never know what the future will bring, and a lot of the other people that were weighing in on that decision making were saying that they were having COVID outbreaks again, so down south, so. Anyways, back to number 9. Okay,
Number.
the chair switch. All right, we're going into public hearings. The reason for this public hearings is to let the public and citizens to be able to address the situation of what we have going on, and Juliana will explain that, and then I will open it up for the public to comment on. So Juliana, if you want to go into this situation. Do you want me to read, or you want to go ahead and read through each one individually?
Yeah, so they're going to be individual because all 4 of them have to be publicly heard on an individual basis. But just for the summary, so these are 4 very standard planning ordinances that every city should have or do have that govern very typical applications for conditional use permits, address non-conforming uses, variances, and rezoning and zoning text amendments. And so the first one we're going to be starting with tonight is proposed ordinance 867. Which is concerned with conditional use permits. So we'll be able to go into the other ones. There's more in-depth background for each one of those, but we'll take them one at a time so that people can comment on each one individually. So a zoning district has a series of different uses. And so we may have talked about this at a previous meeting, but we have what are called use by rights, which means there is no additional permitting for those uses in a certain zone. There are conditional uses, which are uses that are adjacent to those types of uses or complementary, but may have certain aspects that you want to have higher control over. So for example, in the staff report on page 77, I give the example of a church. So community buildings, churches, places of assembly are typically conditional uses where they do fit within a residential neighborhood, but there are other considerations concerning traffic, parking needs that are not typical of other residential uses. And so the conditional use permit allows you some flexibility of uses while still controlling those aspects that may bother other people. Some communities are moving to neighborhood residential mixed uses that allow for smaller scale restaurants with conditional use permits, or small retail shops or offices. So it's just an example of those. So this is more talking about the process itself and not conditional uses. But basically, when a individual comes to us with an idea and it's a conditional use, they go through a permitting process. And so what we're proposing is an update of our current ordinances. So we do have a conditional use permit ordinance, but unfortunately it has not been updated for some time. So there's a series of findings that have to be made per state law and per our local ordinances. Unfortunately, our findings are out of date with current planning case law. And so what that means is that someone at some point in the United States or in the state of California has legally challenged some of these pieces, and the state Supreme Court or the federal Supreme Court have found them illegal or unconstitutional. So for example, on page 78, I summarized the recommendations and changes that were proposed in here. And one of those is the finding of morals. So morals or peaceful neighborhoods are not legally defendable anymore in the United States in general, because morals are very subjective and ambiguous. So my morals may be different from every single council member's morals. And so that's why they were found unconstitutional and are no longer enforceable. So basically what we did is we went through and we wanted to create a clear purpose for conditional use permits so that people understand as time goes by, they understand why we did this ordinance and why we're doing it this certain way. And that's just very useful for longevity purposes for all of our ordinances. So each one should have a purpose to kind of clarify that and continue the record on why we did that. Each one of these ordinances, you'll find a very similar point, which is we refined the application process so that it is in compliance with the state of California's Permit Streamlining Act of 1977. And so that Permit Streamlining Act requires the city to review an application in a timely manner. And they have definitions and very strict timelines for what that means. So for example, when I receive an application, I have 30 calendar days from the date that we receive it to review for completeness. So that doesn't mean it's approved in 30 days, but what it means is I look at the application, I make sure that all of the required materials are in it, they've paid their fee for the application, and then if they have all of those things in order, they're deemed complete, and then they're scheduled for a public hearing. So all conditional use permits within the state of California are required to have a public hearing. We currently do that, so we didn't have to update that, but it is something as part of the process. So again, we establish new findings to grant a conditional use permit that comply with the case law. We also remove vagueness. We want to make sure when we're making a finding that we're very clear about what we mean when we're trying to make those findings. Because again, the more subjective a finding or the more subjective an ordinance, the more likely we are to have personal interpretation, and that's not legally defendable in the court system. So when we go through these ordinances and process applications, we want to always remember we want to be fair and equal. And so that's why we want to be as clear as possible about what we want these people to achieve, to be able to be compliant with our ordinances. And finally, we establish some clear standards for the application of conditions. So for example, say we have a proposal for a church and they come in and, for example, we have a planning commissioner who would like to see the church contribute to the city for bicycle parking. Well, we don't have an ordinance or a nexus to require that. And so legally, we cannot require that of the applicant. Now, if we do happen to have off-street parking standards, we are able to set a condition of approval being you shall supply X number of parking spaces or pay a parking in lieu fee to make up that for public parking. So you always have to have what we call a nexus for applying those conditions of approval. So you have to have some kind of approved plan, some kind of ordinance or regulation that requires them to do that thing. So for example, the Greenway is an excellent example of a plan, excuse me, that allows you to put a condition of approval on a project that says, you shall set aside X number of feet for a public access right-of-way to meet the Greenway master plan. So that is a legally defendable adopted plan of the council and of the city. And so we are able to add those two conditions of approval. So we did add language to the ordinance to clarify that, just to make sure as we continue to implement, it's very clear and we stay within our legal bounds. And again, the last piece of this is we applied this to all four, which is a legally defendable appeals process. So under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution, we have to provide due process, which means we have to allow people to appeal their conditional use permit decision from Planning Commission to City Council. So we want to make sure that all of that is completely within that constitutional right. So for example, if someone goes to Planning Commission, doesn't get what they want, they have every right to come to the City Council and make their case. So we want to make sure all that language is there and we respect that right. So I'm going to stop there and see if you have any questions.
Alrighty. Let's first open up to the council, and then I'm going to open it back up to the public. Is there any questions from the council at this point in time?
I do.
Yes, Debbie.
Okay, so does this eliminate administrative approval for out of the cookie cutter situations?
It depends. So that's always the good planning answer. So again, if something, your current zoning code is very, very strict. And so your zoning code is very explicit in terms of if it is a use by right, then it is allowed. If it's listed as a conditional use, then it goes through this process. And then if it is not listed, it is strictly prohibited. So if we do happen to get a gray area, what we would typically do in that circumstance is either we would recommend a zoning code amendment to address that issue, or we would do it through a conditional use permit process through the Planning Commission. What I would most likely recommend with a zoning code, such as the city of Yreka, is to do a zoning code amendment and look at what that would do to the impact of that zone, and then bring it through to the council and Planning Commission.
Okay, another question?
Yes. Please.
Okay, so regarding not only this one, but the other three, what outreach is done to the immediate area that is being changed in one way or another?
Yeah, so, excuse me. All public hearings within a conditional use permit, variances, rezoning are required by law to meet Government Code 65090 and Government Code 65091. So 65090 requires that we post in a public circulation paper a minimum of 10 days in advance. So for example, these public hearings all had to go into the Siskiyou Daily News at least 10 days ahead of time. Typically it's 14 because they only post on Wednesdays. And then 65091 requires that for like a conditional use permit, variance, or rezoning, that all property owners or parcel owners within 300 feet of that parcel are notified via mail a minimum of 10 days prior to that happening.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, that helps.
And we currently follow those processes. Those are state law.
Good questions there.
Notified by mail.
10 days.
10
A
days
minimum
prior.
of 10 days. We try to do it much sooner because the mail can be a little bit,
Slow.
yes.
Or lost.
Goes to
Snail
Reading-
mail?
goes to
Yeah.
Reading and back.
Yeah.
Snail mail.
Really
So-
snail, and they're going to raise the rates.
Great. Any other questions, council?
Oh, that sounds good.
Okay, I'm going to open it up to the public now. Any public comments regarding number 867 ordinance?
Evening, council. Evening, Juliana. Jerry Stalker, city resident and business owner. The only way I can kind of give you my question is to ask it how it pertained to me while I was going through it. For example, the secondhand store that I have now was a conditional use permit of, excuse me, commercial highway zone. One that I've talked about recently also is group housing. That's a conditional use permit under commercial highway. How is that? How is anything that you've discussed or talked about tonight affect that? Or are you changing any of those conditional uses and how that, for example, how the group housing would, has it changed or is the process basically the same?
So because it's a public hearing, we can't go back and forth, but I will answer that at a later date. So if you have any other questions.
That's it.
Okay.
Thank you, Jerry. Okay, any other questions from the public regarding number 864? Okay, we'll bring this back to the council and actually, did you want to comment on that, Juliana?
Would you like me to?
Yes, please.
Okay, so this does not change any conditional uses. So that none of the 4 ordinance tonight change anything in the zoning code. These are basically planning processes to implement the zoning code. So basically, if anything, this will actually make the process a little bit easier because your expectations are a little bit clearer. And then it also is much more clear on the application process.
So it's gonna be good for clarification for everybody and there'll be no less guessing going on.
May I ask one?
Yes.
I am so sorry to ask a question late in the game,
Okay, fine.
but regarding
Can you put your microphone close?
the grandfather clause,
Thank you.
and because we have so many historical homes in the area,
That will be our next item.
never mind.
Yeah, I know where you're going. We got that.
Okay. Well, then, now we are at the point where there's no other discussion, then this, obviously, if the council okays this, this will be the first reading, and this will go into, we'll have another second reading of this, so just so the public and council knows that. Okay. So what is the wishes of the council at this point in time on this number 9A, this would be?
If this is, Mr. Mayor, if this is the first reading, then do we have to vote on it, or do we vote on it at the second reading?
There is a suggested motion on page 77, which is just to
No,
accept.
your numbers are different.
Oh, sorry.
It starts at 81 and goes to.
Oh, interesting.
88.
Well, it's the highlighted option number 2, which is a motion to accept the first reading of ordinance 867 and move to a second reading. Oh, yeah, and it's on your agenda packets on the front page.
Oh, on the front page.
I'm
on the
looking-
wrong
oh.
page.
Front page, yeah. Cover page. Number 9A, if you read down recommended city council action. I'll just go ahead and say it. I, Dwayne Keg, will make the motion to accept the first reading of ordinance number 867 and move to a second reading.
Council Middleton, I will second the motion.
We don't have a
I don't have
9A.
You don't have
I
page
have a
3?
nine-
It's on the
9A.
cover page.
It's
Nope,
page 3.
We're missing page.
That's what I have, and it goes to here, and there is no,
It's not an A. It's, it's at the end of it. It's on page 3 of 5.
9A right there.
where's, never mind.
I didn't see it either.
We changed the format on you, so it's not your fault.
Yes, you did.
Okay. So we,
You just want to keep us on our toes.
Yeah.
Yes.
okay, we have a motion and a second. I'm gonna continue. Is that okay?
Who seconded?
Corey did.
Oh, boy.
Okay. Joan Smith Freeman,
Aye.
Paul McCoy still absent, Corey Middleton.
Aye.
Debbie Baird.
Aye.
And Dwayne Keg, aye. Now we'll move on
Thank
to
you.
9B, zoning ordinance creation and amendment, chapters 16.12, 16.46, 16.59, non-conforming lots, uses and structures.
So here
Take
you
it
go.
away.
This is gonna be the fun one. These are the ones that we get to deal with. So a non-conformity in zoning is a structure or type of use or a lot that existed prior to a rule change. So for example, historic buildings that may not meet current setbacks or may have a use that's no longer compatible with the neighboring area. So this ordinance, we do not have one that addresses it. We have various sections that are a little bit outdated. So what we're proposing to do is create a new ordinance and remove those sections to have one area where all of this regulation is located for ease of location. And that's the proposed chapter 16.59. So what this does is it does 2 things. One, it sets a clear standard of rules that's legally defendable for those uses to either come into compliance or to operate in a legal non-conforming status. So what it does is it protects a property owner's right to maintain that non-conforming use, because at some point it was conforming. But as a city grows and ages and you change your zoning codes and you change your building codes, things like that, to address the current need or what you believe is the future desire for the city. So for example, increasing densities when you have a single family home with a bunch of apartments around it in a more higher density neighborhood. You make those decisions at a higher level, but you want to make sure you still respect that homeowner's right to continue that use. So what we're proposing to do is create these rules that protect that property owner right, so that if the home were to burn down, they are able to reconstruct that home as long as it's under a certain percentage of damage. And the same thing for different uses. So if a natural disaster happens, it used to be called a burn letter, is you would get that to your insurance or to your home loan or the bank that's helping you finance your home. We don't do burn letters anymore. What we do is we have these overarching ordinances that protect the homeowner's right, that if it were to burn down, you can rebuild as is.
Same footprint.
Same footprint, correct. So what it does do as well is that when you do have a non-conforming use, such as like an auto body shop in a neighborhood, it does not allow them to expand that use. So you typically don't want an auto body shop in a neighborhood, because we have data now that suggests that asthma rates are higher around that use. And that use is more appropriate in an industrial and more commercialized area as opposed to a neighborhood residence. But we understand that we grow, and some of those are historic and have been there a while. So they can continue to operate, but they will not be allowed to expand for various reasons. So it's very similar to our first item that we have tonight. We create a very clear purpose for regulating non-conformities. The other thing this does is it protects a vacant lot owner as well. So if you happen to have what we call a subpar lot, so if it's too small, what you can still do is you can still build on it. And then we basically work with that lot owner to still be able to use their lot to the fullest, even though it may be under regulation. So if you have a minimum lot standard or things like that. So it does allow them to develop that lot still, but it still has to match the uses of what the zone is. The other thing we do is we define non-conforming uses, lots and structures to create clear understanding of what they are and what the reasonable regulations are for their continuance as we move forward. It also clarifies state mandated exemptions for equitable housing, agriculture, timber harvesting, and mineral production projects. If you're really interested, I added the government code section if you want to read a riveting state code on
Exciting as
that.
that sounds.
But there are special privileges granted to timber harvesting operations, mining, and that equitable housing and agriculture pieces set in state code. And then it also establishes that language to clarify the protections of legal versus illegal. So again, if we have a non-conforming use that never got permits, that was never inspected by the city, they would not be allowed to continue. They would have to come into conformance. So it makes sure that people who are doing things that are not allowed in the code before or even after the code change are brought into compliance, and clarify that.
So now all of this can be brought back in front of the planning commission and basically contested and then be brought back to us eventually, if that's the case.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, at any time, if anyone disagrees with city staff recommendation, the proper legal procedure is to take it through a planning commission and then city council process, depending on what it is. If it is something related to uses, zoning, it usually should go through planning before it gets to you, just in case that we have multiple appeals on that.
Okay, anything else you want to add to that?
Nope.
Okay, then I will actually open this up to public comment and then back to the council. So public comment, open it up to.
Lorenzo Love. These non-conforming lots have been grandfathered in. If they're sold, does that grandfather clause pass on to the new owner?
Good question. Okay, she'll bring that back to you. Thank you, Lorenzo. That's a good question. Very good question. Okay, any other public comments? I'll close the public comment section of this and open it back up to council. And Juliana, if you want to weigh in on that, please.
It depends.
Oh.
No, actually, for the most part, grandfather lots, uses, and structures are passed on to the owner, and they are allowed to continue in there as long as they are legal status. So again, if you are operating an illegal business in your home that's not allowed in the code and you sell it, it is still an illegal business. But if you are operating a legal use, or if you have a historic structure, for example, if you do sell it, you are not required to come into compliance with that. The only thing you are required to do is that if a home burns down, you do have to come up to the current fire and building code. And unfortunately, that is a state mandate. That is not something we can control, but we would allow them to build within an existing footprint and rebuild as a non-conforming building.
Which also brings back, make sure everybody has the proper insurance.
Correct.
Oh,
Okay, any other comments from council at this point in time?
I really do appreciate you stating the difference between what's required at the state that's not negotiable and what gives us a little flexibility here. I know we have a lane we have to stay in, but sometimes we can serve our community better if we're a little flexible within those parameters.
And through the chair, the historic district does have special properties to it, which I don't believe I emailed you, but I was wrong. The historic district is nationally and state registered.
I was right.
You were right. I was wrong. So they are afforded special consideration when it comes to non-conforming uses, but we take those on a case-by-case basis.
Any other questions by council? If not, then I'd
Just-
like to
just a
listen to a
comment.
motion.
Oh.
This is 9B. Anyways, I'm
You didn't
sorry.
hear
What'd you say?
I said, I just had a comment.
Oh, okay.
So I was pleased to hear, and Lorenzo had a really good point. I was
Very good
concerned
question.
about that as well.
Mhm.
Get
Very
closer.
good question.
That it is grandfathered in. But I did notice in here that that the lot has to be, where did it go? I underlined it. Here it is. It has to be recorded with the county assessor's office and may
Correct.
be used for purposes permitted by this title. That's for non-conforming lots. And then for the structures, it's kind of the same thing. It has to be registered in a way that's legal. It can't have changed from the time that it was recorded. So, yeah, that's good to know. Because remember, we had some people come to us on the ADAs. Now, does this also follow the ADAs, the small houses that are built on the lot with the
Accessory
larger
dwelling.
accessory dwellings? Yes.
So in terms of, so accessory dwelling units are allowed as basically a use by right for any single family resident. And I believe that it has been expanded to duplexes as well now, but I have to do a little bit more research on how that works with SB 9, Senate Bill 9.
SB 9.
In terms of Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA compliance is only waived in cases of historic buildings, and only if those historic buildings are not related to a civic function. And again, that's a very gray area where we'd have to take it on a case by case, but those are the only cases that I've heard of ADA being waived is those historic buildings.
That makes sense.
And as far as accessory dwellings,
Accessory,
that's personal. That's not it's not a public building, so you don't have to do ADA.
Right.
But- But you said, are you referring to strictly public buildings,
No,
No,
residential and private buildings as well? Then?
the way the ADA is written is that if a historic building serves a civic purpose, and so that can be museums, that can be community buildings. Some people have argued in certain states that it includes places of assembly like churches. But
Okay, but to me, those are all public buildings.
Correct.
Well, it's public and it's used by the public.
correct.
Yes,
Civic.
used by the public.
Well, and-
not personal, like you were saying, a accessory dwelling for
Right.
personal rent is not one you would have to have that for.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. I was just curious. Thank you.
No, it's good questions. Good. Okay, any other questions? Anybody have a motion for number 9B? It says the recommended, if that's what's acceptable.
Mr. Mayor, as Joan Smith Freeman, I will make the motion to approve. There's wording here. Motion to accept the first reading of ordinance 868 and move to a second reading. And I just have to say that I'm pleased that we're getting our codes up to, up to standards.
Yes. I'll second.
Motion in a second. I'll do roll call. Joan Smith Freeman.
Aye.
Paul McCoy is still absent. Corey Middleton.
Aye.
Debbie Baird.
Aye.
And Dwayne Kig, aye. So now we'll move on to 9Cs. Zoning ordinance creation, chapter 16.57, rezoning. Juliana.
Great, thank you. So this is the creation of a new ordinance for rezoning and zoning text amendments. There is no language in the code for this, which you should have language in the code for this. So what this does is it allows the city to be flexible with its zoning code and address when you get something that is non-conforming or someone brings a new idea. So for example, you have a very strict code that says if it's not explicitly listed, it's not allowed. And so that is a very black and white situation. And frankly, the world has some grays in there. So say someone comes up to you and says, I want to put a family fun center in this commercial zone, but we don't have any zoning that allows for a family fun center. What they can do is apply through the city to do a zoning code amendment to find those, and then staff would work with them to find the zones that are compatible with that use and make a recommendation to Planning Commission and the City Council to amend the code to either allow that use as a use by right or a conditional use permit use. And so this just opens that up. It's a very typical function that cities do. And then the other thing it allows is people can rezone their properties. So as the city changes and develops and grows how it does, the city or a private individual may want to rezone a section of the city to a different use. And so as long as that use fits the general plan land use element, they are able to do rezoning. So for example, right now, if you have a property in the commercial highway and you want to rezone it to commercial tourism to give you some more options to be more tourist oriented, this establishes a process to do that. And it would allow that person to do that. And since both commercial tourism and commercial highway are under the same general plan land use designation, they would be allowed to be granted that under certain findings. And so this establishes a process to do that. It establishes findings, and then it goes through the same things we talked about in the others, which is a clear purpose and a clear appeals process.
Yep, I'm gonna,
Okay.
let's open up for the public real quick, and then I'll bring it back, because I know we have some questions on this one. So I'm gonna open this up to the public on 9C. Do we have some questions, comments, concerns regarding this rezoning process? Okay, well, I'll close the public comment section of this. I'm going to open it up to the council, and I think Joan had her hand up first, so.
I do have a question for clarification, if you will. When you said the Family Fun Center, that tweaked my curiosity. So during events, special events like Gold Rush Days, I know that in the past and other kiddie days, what do you call it? What Chris
I know what
Taylor
you're
used to
talking
have. Anyway, they used to have like a bounce house and
Right.
kind of like a family fun center, and they would have it in different locations. Not to my knowledge in a residential area, but it was usually downtown, like in a bank parking lot or, you know, other places. I'm just curious if that falls into that. We wouldn't have to rezone the area to give them temporary
For
use
special
Nope.
events.
for a special event.
Nope.
Right.
No, special events are under a separate set of ordinances that are not constrained by zoning code.
Oh, okay.
So when I talk about a family fun center, I'm thinking of a permanent brick and mortar laser tag, paintball, you know, go-karts.
Sounds like you have some good ideas.
Yeah, mini golf, if you want to do things like that. So I was thinking more brick and mortar, but it is a good point to clarify. When you have temporary uses, those are usually constrained to their own specific ordinances. So for example, special events have certain aspects to them that are very, very different from permanent uses. And so that's why we have a special event ordinance, which has procedures, applications, so that we can kind of take those into consideration without constraining them to a specific zone of the city.
Good, because we've got Gold Rush Days. coming
Yes,
up.
this would not, yeah, this would not impact that.
I don't know, they did want to do that dunk tank thing, you know.
Well, we suggested that, yeah. Good question, thank you.
And just a point of clarification, all rezonings and zoning text amendment require both planning commission and city council review. So the current ordinance that we're on and then the variance ordinance are very unique in that way that it requires both bodies to agree. Or not necessarily agree, but it requires both bodies to review. Yeah, to review and hear it.
And hopefully agree.
Hopefully, that's the ideal, but it happens. It's okay.
Yeah, because, Mr. Mayor, if we disagreed with what the planning commission did, then technically it goes back to the planning commission, right?
It will depend on the severity of the changes. But typically, yes, we would take comments, questions, concerns at the city council level, and then you can dictate the possible issues that you have for them to address, and then we take it back to the planning commission for more working kind of sessions.
One thing I encourage is the council to follow the planning commission meetings, see what's going on there too. I've been trying to follow them, not necessarily at every meeting, but at least see what's on the agenda, make sure that something that might be a hot topic for us to deal with too. So, and I encourage the audience too, the citizens to go, because they're public meetings also, to go to the planning commission meetings also, because it's good to know what the planning commission is talking about. I know Corey sat on it, Debbie sat on it, I sat on it, and on the planning commission at one point in time, and we would encourage people, citizens, to go to the planning commission meetings, because most of the time it was very few people. So it's very good for them to be involved in what's going on, the planning part of it. So
That's
anyway.
what's going on lately too.
Yes, tomorrow night's a good one.
Yes, good point. Tomorrow night's planning commission meeting.
Yes,
It actually has a good topic tomorrow night too.
yes,
So.
yes.
What's that? What's the
I
topic?
don't know that we can say.
No, we can't.
Can't talk about
It might come to you.
Okay.
So
Interesting.
Yes. Anyways, back to 9C. Is there any other questions? I know you have a question, Debbie, on 9C, because I know you were like, before Joan.
No, I'm good.
You're good? Okay. Corey?
Okay.
All righty then. I'd like to have somebody make a motion.
Councilman Middleton, I will make the motion to accept the first reading of ordinance 869 and move to a second reading.
Dwayne King will make a second on that one. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do roll call. Joan Smith Freeman.
Aye.
Paul McCoy still absent. Corey Middleton.
Aye.
Debbie Baird.
Aye.
And I, Dwayne King. We will move on to 9D, zoning ordinance amendment, chapter 16.58, variances.
all right, this is the beefy one. So this was kind of the impetus for why we needed to update these four very, very important ordinances, excuse me, in your zoning code, because we were applying variances very liberally as a city, and we should not be doing that. So variances are special planning grants that the legislative bodies of the city can grant to different property owners who experience a hardship. And the definition of a hardship is expressly defined in federal and state law. And that basically means that because of something on the property or how the property is configured, it constrains them to a point where they cannot use their property, and therefore they claim a hardship. Now, there's two different types of variances within planning. There's an area variance, which you as a city are allowed to grant in California, which basically looks at a specific property and how the zoning code is applied to that. So say you have a property that requires certain setbacks and you have a subpar lot that doesn't allow you to build because of those setbacks. And so what a variance does, it allows that person to work with the city to find basically a common ground where they can use their property to the best of their ability while still following the intent of that zoning code. So it has to be reasonable. And so we talk about that in the ordinance and clarify what that means. So for example, if someone comes to the city and says, well, my dream home is a 3-story home and the zoning code only allows me to build 1 story. That is not a hardship under the zoning code or under variance law. What is a hardship is if you have a mine shaft on your property and you want to exempt yourself from the setbacks to avoid building on the mine shaft. that is a perfect example of when a variance is definitely able to be granted. Or say they want to build a 2-story home as opposed to the 1-story to avoid and still use the maximum amount of their property. Just to, again, to avoid that piece of their property that is exposed. Another good example is the Yreka Creek. So for example, if someone has a small lot that abuts the creek and they're not allowed to, build within a certain distance of that creek, we can get a variance for them to get rid of the setbacks and build on the other portion of their lot, or to build a level higher so that they still get the same square footage that they're trying to, build off of. And so there has to be that nexus. You can't just grant a variance just because someone wants something. That's unfortunately not considered a hardship under the law. The other variance that you are not allowed to do is called a use variance. So for example, if there is a specific type of use that is prohibited in the zoning code in a certain zone, you are not allowed to give them a variance to do that use. And that's because of a government code section 65906. So that is a California law that prohibits that. Other states may be able to do those variances, but unfortunately, California is not one of those. In the case where that happens though, where someone, like we said before, wants to do something that's not allowed in the zoning code, they could apply for the zoning code text amendment and a rezoning. That's how we would still deal with that issue. So there are still avenues for those people to take, but unfortunately variances are not that avenue. So one of the things we did was clarify the criteria for granting a variance. So again, making sure that we're only granting variances in cases where there is a genuine bona fide hardship, and making sure that those hardships are understood and that the relief we're giving them is equal to that hardship. So again, you can't give them so much that they overextend the zoning code purpose, but you can give them just enough to be able to utilize that lot to the fullest. So going back down, we created a clear purpose why we're doing that. We refined the applications. And then, as we stated before, we established new findings within the chapter that we're suggesting, and we followed very specific case law around that. And then we established clear standards for the application of conditions for a variance to minimize the impacts to surrounding uses. Because again, if we are granting a variance for, say, someone to build a 2-story and a 1-story zone, we want to make sure that that is done in such a way that it is not impacting the neighboring properties as much as possible. So again, either requiring additional vegetation, requiring certain types of facade improvements, to make sure that those are all kind of meshing into the neighborhood themselves. So I will leave it at that.
Up to the public comment section of this. This is actually another interesting one too. So. Any public comments at this point in time?
Oh, you're okay.
Okay, then I will close the public comment section of this and open it up to City Council again. Council, do we have any questions?
I do. So I heard you loud and clear, but I do have a question. So variances, as you say, the whole purpose of variances is to work with our citizens, to try to come up with something that on their lot that's acceptable to both. But I see there's a statement on here that kind of worries me. It says variances are rarely granted.
Correct.
Why is that?
So a variance, a way to think about it is a variance is an exception to the rule. And we don't want to give too many exceptions to the rule, because at some point we need to stop and look at the rule itself. And so that's kind of the example for a use variance. So since you cannot do that in California, what it does is it makes you look at the rule itself and see, maybe this isn't the right rule. And so it's a different process. So we still work with people on that. What the purpose of a variance is not really to work with people and come to a compromise. What a variance is it's a legal relief to a hardship. And so that's where that comes in, is that this is something like the mine shaft. You can't prevent that. If you bought a property and all of a sudden a sinkhole happens, you can't prevent that. That's what a variance is for. Now, if you have a certain neighborhoods or something like that where you see more, for example, dog groomers. Say one person wants to open a dog grooming place, but can't do that in that zone. But maybe there's 2 or 3 other places that are like, oh, hey, you know, that's a really good idea. I'd like to do that in my house, and they happen to be in a similar area. That's showing a trend that your rule or your zoning code may not be flexible enough to do that. And what they can do instead is go through the text amendment, make that a conditional use, and they would still be allowed to do that use. So it's kind of a difference between, again, a variance is a legal granting for that extreme hardship. And that's why they're rarely granted. Because again, as you continue to do those exceptions, the rule doesn't make sense anymore. And there's no point in having that rule or having the rule written the way it is.
But there's other ways that you can do it, too, like a conditional use permit.
Yeah.
Well, that just worried me when I saw that, because.
Another good example too would be like, say, you all of a sudden have a creek in your property and it's in a floodplain, and they come to you and say, I want to put my house further out of that flood zone.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
You know, that's gonna be a hardship, saying I don't want my house in a floodplain, and I bring it up 15 feet, you know, even though if it doesn't allow that, that's a hardship, saying my house can be in a floodplain. So that'd be a good example.
Prime example is my house, where it sits.
Yeah.
Right next to the
Sure.
creek.
Right next to the,
And my back part of my house is,
over the creek.
yeah, well, just about, yeah. If they had their way
Yeah,
years
something
ago,
happened, you would have to.
but it was, that's one of those
Yes.
things.
Hardship,
It could
yeah.
be a variance on that because of the way the location
Right.
of it. You know, if I had to
One good
rebuild
example.
that bedroom or do something to my bedroom, it's too close to the creek. Technically, I could not do that, but I could, because of that, it's a
Right.
hardship. It literally would be a hardship because it's already there. I'd have to rebuild. And that's one of those things.
His grandfather did, right?
Well, no, he actually, that's very correct in that currently, I'm assuming, I haven't looked at your house. Dwayne's house is meeting certain setbacks that are required for that zone, but since the creek may be eroding away the bank and getting closer to his foundation, in order to address that, we could allow him to either add on the front of the house and discontinue use of the back, or to even shift the house entirely. But what a variance would do is it would get rid of those setbacks because of the backside of his lot, kind of basically eroding into the stream itself.
It actually was, so.
Wow.
This is a good example.
Funny story of
Yeah,
that.
that's a very good example.
Yeah.
Thank
The
you.
Laws that owned my house for 50 years before I did, at least, they, when the Sharps Mill was back there, Sharps Mill kept pushing the creek over further and further to give themselves more land use. Well, it actually did start eroding that.
Oh,
And so then he actually had to go to them and say, hey, you guys got to stop pushing the creek over because it's taking out my house.
wow.
So, yeah, that is one of those circumstances that would be justifiable. So.
Again, we usually point to recommending variances when something is, you know, you can't work around that. It's usually a natural feature. I have granted one variance ever.
Oh,
Yeah, otherwise I normally recommend denial. But one variance that I have granted was, it was a lot in Mount Shasta that was abutted by Union Pacific Railroad. It was at the end of a dead end. And per the zoning code's definition of a front lot, the front of the lot was the long side of the lot. And so the person, if they were able to build the house, it could only be basically a 10-foot wide house based on the setback rules. So what they did is they applied for a variance to have the front side of their lot be the short end. And so that was the only instance where again, that is a hardship.
makes sense.
You know, that was a very unique circumstance that we granted that. So.
You gonna live?
Yes, I am so sorry.
No.
Okay.
don't be.
So yeah, again, you know, I do bring this up in cases at the end of that paragraph where I talk about it's not rarely granted, where there are other tools, there are other processes that we encourage and work with people to go through to address some of these more common issues that may not be applied for a variance.
Questions? Do you want to do sign language?
Oh, probably not. Come on down.
Okay, then what is the wishes of the council? 9D?
Variances.
Yes.
motion. Councilman Middleton, I'll make the motion to accept the first reading of ordinance 870 and move to a second reading.
Motion by Corey. Second.
I'll second.
Second by Joe Smith Freeman. Joseph Raymond.
Aye.
Paul McCoy is still absent. Corey Middleton,
All right.
Debbie Baird,
Aye.
and Dwayne Keg.
Thank you.
Move on to, that's it.
Thank you,
9D,
Juliana,
that
for
was
your
it.
work
Thank you, Juliana.
Thank you,
Good
Juliana.
job.
and explanations.
Yeah. Great. All right, then we will move on. Number 10, new business, agenda title, evaluation of the 2022 city council meetings calendar that includes removing the July 5th, 2022 scheduled meeting and evaluation of other possible date and time changes. Are you gonna speak on behalf of that, or do you want us to talk about it?
So it's really the city manager is looking for direction on considering cancellation of the July 5th meeting and bringing that back to you, as well as should there be other meeting changes that the council would like to discuss. Good, and so.
Can I
I'll
add
turn it
on
over.
to this?
Yeah,
So
uh-huh.
it was brought to my attention too, that the September 6th meeting, which would be the meeting right after Labor Day, might be a conflict also in the future.
Oh, really?
Yes,
Well, I know that it's hard for staff.
yes.
You know, if the meeting is right after a holiday.
Well, especially that, because technically if they want that day off, they can have that day off, the way our policy reads.
Following holiday.
So with our policy that way, correct me, am I correct on that? That they can actually take that following day off of Labor Day. So they would be absent on the September 6th date, which would be the day after Labor
That's
Day.
Tuesday.
I know they can on.
That would be a vacation day for most of
Would
the,
be just an extra vacation, because I know
That's
they, what
correct.
is it, Chris, certain ones they can take, I know July 4th was one, it depends on the day it falls on, correct? So if July 4th falls on a Friday, they can take that
Thursday
Monday
to
off.
Friday,
there.
like Christmas, like
Right.
Thursday, Friday.
So
yeah.
some of
Yeah.
those, but that wouldn't, this one
This
wouldn't
one not.
conflict with that.
Correct.
Okay. The other thing I would like to bring to the attention of the council, this is something that I discussed with Jason also, is possibly moving our city council meetings back to a Thursday date, and let me explain why.
And I will.
Let me explain
Yes,
this, I know,
okay.
let me explain. My reason why we did that was Steve, previous city manager, thought it would be more vital for his staff to have that at that point in time. Since then, Jason said it would not conflict as much as what the previous city manager proposed. Me personally, this is my personal, and I'm gonna open it up for everybody else. My personal is it would give me and council more time, provided that the agenda was brought out on that previous Friday. And then we had city council meetings on Thursday. It would give us a couple extra days to go over the agenda properly and make sure that we make proper decisions in conjunction with what the citizens want. Because I know of many times, like this agenda, matter of fact, I'll even go into detail on mine. This weekend, I actually took a day off Saturday. So we had the agenda that came out on Friday. I couldn't review it on Saturday. I was actually gone Friday night and Saturday, came back on Sunday and had a little time on Sunday and a little bit time on Monday, and then today to finally finish up on the agenda. Luckily, I had the luxury today to finish it up. I sent my guys down to a job, but for me personally, it would give me more time as a councilman to properly make a decision in conjunction to what is on the agenda. Like I said, I discussed this with Jason. Jason feels that his staff would have no problem with it in conjunction to, as long as we're not throwing something last minute on the agenda. So anyways, I know Joan wants to speak out on this. But
Yes, I spoke about it when we changed over, but it's been a while, so you guys probably forgot. As you know, I sit on the state board for the League of California Cities. And the board meetings are quarterly, so they're not every month, but there, once every 3 or 4 months. They also have legislative, once a year, they have a city leader summit. These are all on like Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, right in that area. All of these meetings, all of the ones that I just mentioned. So that means that it would be a difficult decision to decide, I should really be at a city council meeting, but if I don't go down to these meetings, I represent 59 northern cities that will not have a vote. So, that's, I would have to look at the agenda, decide, I'd have to talk to the mayor, say, gosh, I really need to go down and vote on this, but I want to vote on an item that's on the agenda. And I remember we had a special meeting, remember when I was at a state board meeting down there, and I had to call in for that. It's not impossible, but it would be a hardship. And I mean, if the council doesn't want representation at the state level, that's a good way I could get off the state board. There's nobody that's been on the state board in our area for as long as I know about it. So I represent the rural areas, the smaller areas. And for instance, some of the things that we talked about this time were the legislative proposals from the legislature, and some of them are on zoning and things that would impact us in a very negative way. In other words, the state trying to come in and control our zoning. So I spoke fervently against that, of course, and we voted to oppose, that legislation and some other. So that's one reason why I do go to these meetings, to make sure that we have a voice. So, and if the meetings are on, this one was on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I did not go on Wednesday. I thought that was too much to be gone, but I did go down Thursday, Friday, and then the state board meeting was Friday afternoon and then Saturday morning, and then I had to rush back for the.
One nice thing about those are during the day, and we have via Zoom on all of our agendas.
These have evening functions as well.
They're usually
Sometimes
social though.
They're social.
But sometimes the board meetings do go late.
I think.
Yes, it's Joe,
I'm
Joe,
sorry.
are you done?
No, but I'll give the floor to her. for
Okay.
now.
I just wanted to say, for me, there's not enough time to review like I would like to review. So I just need more time to review. So it can be
How about
changing
Wednesday?
back to Thursday, or it can be presenting the agenda by the Wednesday before instead of 5 o'clock on Friday.
Good
So either way, we need more time to review.
How about Wednesday?
I'd love to have the agenda on Wednesday.
No, I meant the
Absolutely.
meeting on Wednesday.
Oh,
That gives you one more day.
I mean,
I
that's
haven't thought of
something to
Wednesday.
address too. I mean,
I
I
didn't,
guess,
usually I don't have meetings on Wednesdays. This was, the only one, and I think.
so that's fine too. That's why I'm bringing this up, because like
The
Debbie,
simplest-
I need more time to review it to make a proper decision for what the
the
citizens want.
simplest fix would be to see if we can get the agenda by Wednesday.
When I was on the Board of Supervisors, the meetings were on Tuesday, but we got the agenda on Thursday, the Thursday before,
Right.
which gives you a whole nother day.
Mhm.
So maybe we could ask for that.
There's been a few times that we haven't got it.
Fridays.
Called
Or on Mondays,
Changed
yeah.
by our attorney or changed by staff.
Right.
We didn't even get it. Like,
Until
sorry, we're not gonna have it this weekend. We're making some changes, and we didn't get it till Monday.
Yeah.
So I guess my concern on upping it, like you were talking.
Not-
that
Only a couple times, not all the time.
My concern on doing like what you're saying is I don't know if it would give the staff the proper amount of time. Doing it what Joan just suggested, having a meeting on a Wednesday,
That gives us an extra day.
that's something to discuss. And this is just for discussion right now, just so the council knows, I'm not asking anybody to decide on. The only thing we're asking to bring, everything we're discussing right now will be brought back.
Okay,
Just so everybody knows, public knows that this is going to be brought back. It's not, we're making a decision right now. This is just something for discussion to where everybody can weigh in on that. I do like that idea of Wednesday though. That's
You know,
An
very,
extra day is an extra day.
very few meetings are on
On Wednesdays, I know.
Very
yeah.
seldom.
Tuesdays
I
and
do
Thursdays.
like the idea of the July 5th and the September
Yeah.
6th. That just plain makes sense to me, and maybe even December 20th.
I think
Yeah,
that's,
definitely.
something with the council's consideration right now. I mean, it wasn't on here, but I think we need to bring that back. The July meeting, is council's wishes to bring it back and discuss canceling that meeting?
Possible action.
Possible action.
Discussion,
That's okay
possible
with
Possible
us.
action.
So we don't keep
And
reviewing.
September 6th.
Yeah,
And I don't know, what do you guys think about December 20th? Some people are gone that week.
if necessary.
Come on down.
We're not public.
Well, kind of, sort of. Hi. Just to put this out there, Planning Commission does meet on Wednesdays, the third
Yeah,
Wednesday, of
that's
the-
kind of-
but I'm not against you guys moving Wednesdays, because if we were going to talk about any staff issues, I have made the comment that it is very difficult for me to do 2 packets. So this week is fine, doing 2 late night meetings is fine, but having to do the bulk of 2 different planning packets and city council packets can be a lot the week before. So if you do happen to switch to Wednesdays, maybe going to the 2nd and 4th Wednesday,
Yeah,
and then that way I don't have to do 2 packets in a week.
right. There you go. Good idea.
It's not bad.
Good idea.
And one other comment was, there was concern canceling the December 20th meeting, as we're in negotiations at that
Oh,
time.
labor, yeah,
Oh.
not me.
That's true. Okay. All right, so
Concerns to not do it or do it.
She's
Keep
saying that we should do
should,
it.
okay. So do you have an understanding of what we've?
So I think you'd like a recommendation to discuss canceling the July 5th and September 6th meeting at this point.
Correct.
And then possibly evaluating meetings and either an earlier cutoff date for the agenda and or a change in the meeting date.
Perfect. Awesome. Okay. Any other comments on that regarding that?
No, that sounds good. The 5th, yeah, July 5th and September. Makes perfect sense.
Great.
Okay,
We have
that's the
Jason.
recommendation. We don't have to vote on it.
No, that's all it is, and I'll be brought back.
So I'm going to
look
turn
who's
over
here.
city manager
it's our-
comments.
Perfect. So that's what we're off to. Perfect timing on that, Jason. That's city
Was it
manager
time for a staff
and
report?
staff reports.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, we just talked about July 5th and September 6th.
Well, you guys got that clarified?
Canceling those.
Okay,
Bring
perfect.
it back, yeah.
We'll bring back the resolution, so. Jason Ledbetter, City Manager, thank you. Obviously, I was at another board meeting tonight and more on that at a later date. Don't have a definitive answer yet, so. But that was based around the warming center idea, so still betting that out. Still will work after the COC meetings with that little group to discuss what transpired tonight and also vet out other opportunities so that we do have something moving into the winter season. We are working on the critical infrastructure ordinance with Public Works, the fire chief and the police department and our city attorney. And so we'll continue to work on that ordinance. We have a lot of good direction at the moment. And so it will come with a pretty robust staff report that we'll actually have the city attorney review before we bring that forward.
Jason, can I add
Yeah.
something to that? City attorney is not present right now, just so you
Okay.
know. But I would like to address the council on that critical infrastructure ordinance. I would like to address the council in the aspect to make that a high priority because we are entering fire season very quickly. And with the council's permission, I'd like for that to get streamlined as quick as possible and be brought back to us as quick as possible for protection of our citizens and our neighborhoods and our whole city as a whole. So the critical infrastructure would be basically to kind of, how do I want to streamline that one? It's basically what Medford has done and Sacramento's done and some of the other cities have done is basically any high fire danger areas, it will restrict the uses of those areas. So like our greenway, that there would be no camping or fires or anything permitted along the greenway. And that's just an example. There's other areas that our public works, our fire chief and our police chief have identified as critical infrastructure areas that are high fire risk and high dangerous flood risk and everything else. So that's what this is about, this critical infrastructure, and it's to protect our citizens so we do not have an incident like Phoenix Talent area where it burns down half the city. So that's why we've been discussing this and definitely trying to get this thing going, but with the council's permission, I would like to get your guys' consent on streamlining this and pushing this forward so that it can be brought back as quickly as possible.
May I ask a question?
Yes,
Are we waiting for information from our attorney? Is that
our
why?
city attorney is, yes, working on it, on certain aspects. I don't know if I want to go into too much detail about it, but it's just, I think it needs to be put on a higher priority list. And as of tonight, he stated that he has not a lot on his priority list, so I think it's perfect opportunity to say that this could be put on his priority list.
I think it's time sensitive.
I think so too.
I agree, especially since this is,
Yeah,
we're
and
going
yeah,
into fire season.
unfortunately with ordinances, obviously, as we know, ordinances take
Takes a while.
time. So as quickly as possible. So do I have the consent of the council to put this on a higher priority list for Dawn or hand in our city attorney?
Is that on our
Yes.
list? I brought it with me. This little list that you gave.
Oh,
us.
it's
I'm not
not
sure if it
nice.
is on it. It may be on that list, actually. I believe it. I believe it
It
is.
was on that one,
What's
yes.
it under? Housing elements, safety elements, is it under the safety element?
No, it should be its own line item there.
Homeless encampment and soil cleanup. Municipal code. Well, then it should be
I thought it did, I thought it was on there, but
citywide. Am I missing that?
So I'll go ahead, while she's looking for that, I'll go ahead and answer yes, that I,
So it doesn't
like to
look
see that.
like it's on
Yes.
the list, period. So yes, I definitely, what? It's not on the list, then I definitely think we need to put it on the list, my opinion.
and at the top.
Yeah, near the top.
Top.
I know we've got a lot of really important projects that our staff's working on, but we could ask our city attorney, he was already here, city manager, what do you think about us putting critical infrastructure on the list near the top?
Yeah, I think it would, we could just bypass the list on the ordinance for this. I think we're very close to completion anyway with getting the documentation needed for the city attorney. And really staff time between myself and Chief Lemos and possibly Public Works and a little bit of time with the YPD chief. So it's not going to really stop any of those projects that have multiple dates and hard lines that have to be met. So absolutely, I'll put it on the priority list.
thank you.
Excellent.
I'm
All
sorry
right.
to interrupt you.
No,
I just wanted it brought to the council's attention, so.
Now
Yeah.
that you've given us a list.
Yeah.
Follow it.
Thank you.
Well, we can thank that young woman
Juliana.
right back there for that list.
Nice.
So we had, obviously, the assistant city manager and myself responded recently to some complaints about the Burgess Street area. We did meet with that member of the public and just to outline the long-term goal and the sewer project that fixes the most of the roadway back there. Ultimately, after that meeting, just to acquiesce some of the issues that we saw firsthand, Retta and myself then met with Public Works and they have done a lot of work back there already. If you have not seen it, I can forward you some pictures, but some of the potholes over on that area were just very excessive. And so I would say it was filled in. It looks really like a chip seal almost to me, just partially. So until we can get the project up and running, hopefully next summer, this will be a stopgap. So our HR director, along with our assistant city manager and our confidential analyst and myself, have been working on updating the personnel policy. So I know John is not here tonight, but he's doing a wonderful job keeping that on track. And so that's going very well. And I know that that's something you always dream about doing, but I think at this point we have staff and capacity in the HR department to do that. Also, there is and I know Joan will mention this because Joan is League of Cities, but on Friday in Mount Shasta, there's kind of the regional or area meeting. So 5:20, if you're available to come down, if you haven't gotten that information, let me know, but it would be great to have as many people participating in that as possible this Friday. And there's a number of things.
It's at 4 o'clock, right? Not 5:20. 5:20 is the date.
Yeah, 5:20 is the date, and it's I think there's a couple, I'll forward you an email. There's a couple preliminary meetings you can kind of, different tours you can go on, and then I think the meeting must be at 12:30 or roughly 1 or 2 or somewhere in that
There's
range.
lunch, so I think it's 1 o'clock, and there is a tour of the fish hatchery.
Yeah.
There's another tour of the museum, but if people don't sign up for them, they're going to cancel the tours. I just
Okay.
got an email on that today. And they're also wanting to know how many people, because of the caterer, they need to let. It's going to be at the
I feel like
park.
the registration.
At the park. It's going to be at that building, that community building at,
Right.
what's the name of it? Upper Lodge. City Park, yes. Thank you.
And then the only other thing that I just wanted to mention was working with the Economic Development Council on a number of items that we work with them on, but something kind of off the beaten path is they have an events planner. I had thrown out the idea that in the future, maybe they could take on planning Gold Rush days. They are interested in that. And first, they have given me a quote and kind of a scope of work to take over the concert in the park series, not this year, but next year. So they would have enough time to plan, and they would do 10 events. So I will be bringing that forward as we go back and forth to kind of work out the kinks in that scope of work. So I just think it's an opportunity to use some polish, really showcase this event. If it works out, then possibly lead into an event that's specific to the city of Yreka, which is Gold Rush Days, and see if we can't develop that even more. So that's all I have tonight, folks. Thank you. Sorry I was late. But, thank you, Retta, for taking over. And Juliana, thank you very much.
You had it in very good hands.
Yep, we almost got done by 7:30.
Oh, good. After all that, you haven't even have. That's
Oh,
awesome.
yeah. No, we got lots of stuff for you. I actually was told that I'm not allowed to give you more ordinances because I could take up your whole night. So I did give you guys a memo today. I was thankfully the city, excuse me, the city paid for both Felicia Sims and myself in the planning and building department to attend the National Planning Conference in San Diego. We went about 2 weeks ago. It was a week-long conference. It's the first time we've met in 2 years. But it was a really great conference and really highlighted some different techniques and best practices that are coming out for public engagement, and really made me realize that we do need to take a lot more time on the general plan. Although we had different people showing up to every single general plan event that we had hosted throughout February, March, and April, we didn't get the overall participation that we would like to see. For example, we've kind of stagnated in our visioning survey at about 268 individuals, which is great, but we were hoping to get at least 400, which is, approximately where you want to sit. You usually want at least 5 to 10% of the population to take your survey. It's hard to get the rest of them to do it. But it really highlights the need and for a lot more public engagement around the general plan, around the future vision of the city. And so what we're going to do is we're going to elongate the process. Instead of doing it over 2 fiscal years, it will be 3 fiscal years. So we will complete the plan as opposed to being done in, ideally, we were looking to do December of 2022 to have a draft plan to you to then go into the environmental impact report process. That's not going to happen until next year. And so we just want to give more time to really do a lot of outreach. We're going to be giving you guys some updates on that, but we're going to specifically work on some of the points in the memo, which is reaching out to specific neighborhoods, doing more canvassing, expanding some of our budget by applying for grants to do more youth engagement. Since the 8 to 12 demographic is one of our fastest growing in the last 10 years, we want to focus on really prioritizing youth engagement within the plan, as well as starting to engage our communities of color that we have not really done a good job of reaching out to, as well as finally reaching out to individuals who have different levels of disability. We do have a high percentage of individuals who have some sort of physical, mental, or independent living issue with kind of disability pieces. And we want to make sure that we're meeting the needs of those individuals and doing a better job of that. We're also looking into also doing translation services for all of our items, which we have not been doing. So expanding that offering so that we're a much more inclusive process as we go forward. It is a 20-year plan, and it's a very important plan because it will inform our zoning code updates. And so I just want to make sure that we're taking the time to get more input and get specific things going. The two things to highlight out of it is that we're going to focus each month on a different topic area. And so I'm working with Chief Lemus. For the month of June, we'll be safety oriented. So we will be doing a lot of safety public engagement as well as education for the general public around fire safety, flood safety, and other things that may come up within our city. And then in July, we're going to shift over to parks and recreation, since that's another big topic item that's been coming up and a theme that people have been talking about that's important to them here. So each month will be planned out. We're going to be doing, again, more outreach through flyers, possibly doing another round of postcards. But we're going to be trying to use, we're going to try and use a number of different tools as we move forward to try and engage people that we haven't typically got in these meetings. So
That's
thank you.
awesome. Oh, that's great.
One question,
Mhm.
are you still using the newsletter that's in the water bill? I mean, that really gets to every household.
Yeah, and actually we talked about even expanding the newsletter to go monthly if we wanted to do that. The problem with the quarterly newsletters is everybody's got a lot of news. And so it's hard to get everything in there that I need while balancing the needs of the other departments. So for example, I believe this next newsletter is focusing a lot on dogs and a couple of other things in financing, reminding people backflow prevention, things like that. So it's hard to get everything into that one newsletter. So we have talked about different ways of doing maybe a monthly newsletter instead.
I think that'd be great.
Thank you.
Great. No, thank you. That's awesome. Sweet. Sure you want to talk? Go ahead. Jeez. Anybody else?
No, I think that's it. Thank you, Juliana. And as I'll say it always, but very lucky to have this staff here. So.
Yeah, we have a great
Absolutely.
staff. I mean, just superb staff. Everybody's so great. I mean,
did a lot.
We're so lucky. We really are. Anyways, then I will move on to councilman's reports. And I'll go into my little presentation on the point in time count, but it'll be quick and sweet. And anyways, we'll go on to Corey.
Really happy.
It's been busy.
Work's been busy. Yeah, even though everybody's freaking out because interest rates went up, it's still, it's still busy. Our houses are still selling in record time. So it still hasn't affected the market too much. So that's good. What else? It's busy. Ready for summer, seeing all my friends, kids are graduating, their last of everything. So it's always interesting to see them transitioning and to be lonely, empty nesters, some of them. So I believe summer's here.
Yeah.
Gonna be here soon. So it's I don't have a whole lot to report.
Yeah, like you said, housing's going up. For example, the first house I bought on Yama Street.
Yeah, it's starting to market.
Yeah, it's on the market again, and I bought it for $59,000. It was only 8 years old, and now it's for sale for $229,000.
Oh, my.
When I bought it, like I said, $59,000, same house.
But you made improvements.
Yeah, I did improvements, but not
Back then, that was a big leap,
Wow.
right?
Yeah, so that's pretty amazing how much housing's come up. It's kind of hard though, because you look at housing and it's hard for the younger generation to get into housing now because of it. The cost is so escalated. You know, it's my first house, $59,000. Well, you can't even think about a house for 59,000. If you do, it doesn't have a foundation or a roof or anything else. So
I just
it's-
saw a house that was listed. It was somewhere in Oakland, and it was like a tear down for $888,000.
Better grab
Oh
that.
my.
It was seven,
Fix her upper.
it was 700
Yeah.
700 square feet, but completely a tear down for 888.
It's all about the
And it went,
neighborhood.
and it went pending. It was crazy.
Oh, it was pending?
Mhm.
Oh, wow.
So little crazy market,
Yeah,
to say the
yes.
least, but no, just everything's busy. It's town's busy with construction work, and I did drive through the Burgess neighborhood and saw they fixed some of the streets and
Yeah.
yeah, so this happened to be over there, and I said, oh, I'm gonna kind of cruise by and see. I saw a big, I think it's probably the patch you're talking about,
Yeah.
where it was really bad and they redid it, so so I'm happy for those, the neighbors and the citizens in that neighborhood, because I think they were feeling white, neglected for quite a few years, and unheard. They're really unheard, and I know they've been heard. for quite a
They
while.
sent letters for as long as we've been on council. And I say they, and it's my neighborhood.
And just to thank Jason again, not to put him on the spot, so the better city manager is, every person who's reached out to me that's had a problem, and I've reached out to Jason, because, you know, we can only do so much as council members, and we have to refer them over to the city manager so he can take care of it. We cannot get involved in city things, of course. And every time he has said he'd contact the CAP, I appreciate that, because I got back and they just said, wow, he actually called me, spoke to him, thank you, thank you, thank you. So the citizens are really, really happy with you and our decision. I got a lot of compliments, and so it's nice to have the citizens who reach out to us and we follow through. So I appreciate that.
Well, thank you very much. And we're still working on that in particular issue. So.
Okay, thank you. So, like I said, I don't have much.
Thank you, Corey. Appreciate it.
Oh.
Chill.
Can I request a brief public comment on that?
Which one?
Oh, on the point in time.
No, the homeless count.
Oh, that is,
That's point in time homeless.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, the point in time count. Yeah, I'm gonna have that on my little comments.
He wants to talk about it.
Public comment on that?
Oh, yeah, sure. You bet.
after,
Yeah.
after you speak.
I can. Yeah, sure. Okay, Joan, go ahead.
Okay, so I do have a number of things that I wanted to report on, but I did not ask for a special report, but I do have some interesting information about what happened in Sacramento, if you want me to give an abbreviated. But what happened up here was I was nominated as the Citizen of the Year.
Right on.
Thank you.
Cool.
And I did not get it. But I was awarded a community champion, and I was going to bring my little medal that they gave me. It's this cute little medal. It says Community 2022 Community Champion, which was such an honor to me. I was honored to be nominated.
That's cool.
So that was Saturday, and I was at the League of Cities, and I had to ask the president for special permission to leave. And she said, well, you know, we did the major voting on Friday, and then on Saturday I stayed as long as I could, and then hit the highway, and luckily there were not a lot of police on the road. I made it in time. I got home in time to pick up my husband and then go out. It was held out in Shasta Valley at the Roar Ranch. It was a very nice event. So that was this Saturday. The Saturday before, I worked at the Yreka Rotary, the Century Bicycle event that they have every year. And it was crazy because, you know, Friday was blowing and raining and snowing and sleeting. And on Friday, we weren't sure. Jason worked it. You were there at 6 a.m.
I unfortunately did not work it, but I did do the top 100 for the schools. Yeah.
At 6 a.m. I did. I had to be in Weed at 8 a.m. And so I went down there, worked with the Weed Rotary, and we had a stop right there in front of the courthouse. You know, that little park right next to the courthouse with Abner Weed. full size, standing up there, and I've got some really cool pictures of the bicyclists posing with Abner Reed. They just loved it. And so we had water and Gatorade and food for them so that they could go, because we were on the 100, and I was actually 101 miles. These guys were amazing through the wind and some sleet and hail. And they were tough, but they were all smiling and having a good time. And it brought a lot of tourism into our area, and a lot of people stayed in Yreka. And it was at Greenhorn Park. The beginning and the ending was at Greenhorn Park, and we had food. It was all locally prepared by Chef Deb. And it was really a very nice event. And I also wanted to let you know that the Elks are putting on a masquerade ball murder mystery. And I have tickets, and it's this Saturday, and it's going to be at 6 p.m. Saturday, May 21st, if anybody's interested. And I will be in it. I'm going to be a contestant. I don't know if I get murdered or if I am the murderer yet. They don't tell you that till the last minute. So that should be really interesting. But I don't want to spend too much time on that. There were other things that happened. I really want to tell you about the legislative action days, because there were some things at the state level that would impact our city, I feel. And I feel fortunate and honored to be able to be there to vote to oppose some of the things that I thought that were the very worst for our towns. And these were from the Assembly and the state Senate. The first thing was the state budget request. So the Cal Cities is calling on lawmakers to draw on the state's estimated, and it says here 68 billion surplus. When the governor's May revised budget came out, it's $95 billion that the state has in excess. Now, keep in mind that the state owes the cities and the counties money, and that they've not paid back. So that's what $1.6 billion for programs that achieve shared city and state goals, as well as reimburse cities for state unfunded mandates. And so that's what we're asking for. 500 million for the creation of the Housing and Economic Development Program. I don't know if you remember, but that program was done away with under Governor Gray Davis. Yeah, he did away with it. There were whole buildings that were completely emptied out for economic development during that time. 933.5 million for unfunded state mandates. So the state owes more than 933.5 million to cities and special districts for costs related to state mandates incurred after 2004. And they've not paid it back, and they were supposed to pay it back. Now that they have $95 billion, the Cal cities, the League of California cities, all the cities and the counties feel like now's the time for them to pay us back. So of that amount, 466.6 million, not counting interest, is owed just to the cities. So we're asking for that. The pandemic demonstrated the vital role that we played, the cities played, and we want to make sure that we get the money that will help boost our economy back after the pandemic. And a strong city budget creates strong, resilient communities, of course. 180 million for organic waste recycling. I think you know that there's a bill, that organic waste recycling bill.
SB 1383.
Right, and that's the one that we have some concerns about. But luckily, our stores in our area are already giving money to homeless. Not money, they're giving food. As the surplus food comes in, right? And they're giving it to our food banks here. So that's really good, but actually asking for money for that. And housing, the Cal Cities is calling on lawmakers to oppose two bills, SB 897 and AB 211, and AB 2097 Friedman. These bills disregard local zoning. Remember I told you earlier that they're trying to take over our zoning. Disregards local zoning and development standards, restrict local decision-making. And where is Juliana? She should hear this.
What is the name of that bill?
It's,
Number of that bill?
okay, we are voting to oppose SB 897, AB, that's Senate Bill 897, Assembly Bill 2011-2011, Wicks, and AB 2097, Friedman. And interestingly, because Friedman was a city council member. She was, and so I think that she thinks that it's not going to harm us as bad as it is. But you know what, taking over our zoning is not the right thing for the state to do. That's our responsibility, I feel. These bills disregard local zoning and development standards, restrict local decision-making, and eliminate community input. It's not good.
No.
So we're opposing that. There's infrastructure one. Oh, bridge funds. This bill, it's AB 2120, would ensure 55% of the bridge funds headed to California through the federal infrastructure bill. So we want to make sure that the state passes that on. Sometimes they don't. Homelessness, Cal Cities is calling on lawmakers to support AB 2547 and Senate Bill SB 929 and SB Senate Bill 1154, which would increase data, like what you're going to talk about tonight, to improve access to behavioral health services, especially for unhoused residents, and provide housing subsidies for vulnerable populations who are either experiencing homelessness or at imminent risk of experiencing homelessness. So that's one that we are supporting. And climate resiliency, Cal Cities is a sponsor of AB 1985, which would create an online database of organic waste products on the market so local governments can connect with local farmers and community members seeking their organic waste products, and continuing to explore the needed changes. I have a lot more. One that I want to tell you about, I'm not going to do all of them, but remember we were talking about accessory dwelling units. The state, in its infinite vision, has come up with SB 897 Wykowski that we are opposing, because this measure would significantly amend the statewide standards that apply to locally adopted ordinances. You remember we had to go through and we had to redo our ADU.
Junior ADUs.
Yes, we had to completely redo it. Well, now they want us to change it again and make it even more restrictive. Actually, not more restrictive.
Open it up more.
Yes,
Yeah.
they want us to be able to have more than one accessory dwelling unit on a house on a city lot.
Oh,
And we are opposing that. So there's two bills. There's SB 897 Wykowski, and then there's AB 2011 Wicks, and that's the Affordable Housing and High Roads Jobs Act. So those are, and then residential and commercial developing parking requirements, requiring us to, in other words, the state would tell us how we can have our businesses park. How many parking places that they need. Measure would prohibit a local government from imposing or enforcing a minimum automobile parking requirement on residential, commercial, or other developments without regard to the development fee.
I'm actually surprised there isn't a threshold of population to have to comply to some of the state stuff. There should be.
Yeah, there should be. And we ask for that. The League of California Cities, Cal Cities, we do ask for that. But usually it's less than that. So very, very small towns. And there's more. And if you want to read this, all of it, what I can do is maybe I can give it to Jason. Could you make copies and then send it out to everybody? And then at the end of that, where we went around and visited, by the way, they're working on the Capitol. So they built a new building and all the legislators are now down on O Street instead of J Street. So it's a little bit of a walk. But anyway, we visited with them, and then they had breakout sessions, and they were really good. The one that I really particularly liked was the land use and zoning, and I think I was texting back and forth with Jason about that, about the zoning and about the and projects that they were suggesting that would be public-private partnerships so that we could get things done in cities to, to go the extra mile, which I thought was pretty interesting. Anyway, it was a busy few days. I was down there 3 days. And then, like I said, I got permission from the president. She made an announcement at dinner the night before that I would be coming back because I was nominated for Community Champion Citizen of the Year. And I got a standing ovation.
Right on.
They said so many times electeds get criticized. We
Yeah.
don't ever get any recognition for the good work that we do. And so they were all proud that I was getting at least a little bit of recognition. And it was an honor. It was indeed an honor. That's it.
I'm surprised. Were any of you invited? Did you know about this? Oh, you did? I
It
didn't
went
know
out, it
about
was on Facebook and
Facebook.
online.
Oh,
But it
okay.
wasn't marketed as
Yeah.
well as it might have been.
Yeah, man. It's a good place. I know that ranch very well.
I do too. I lived in that area right next door for 30 years.
I got to play there. I got to play in those hay
Next
barns as a
door to
kid.
Next door to the Smith Ranch, yeah. This was the one that's right next to the house on the upper road. And it's like an equipment shed, but bigger. It was really nice. You could see
It's
the
pretty.
marks from the, years. And the owner was there, Colleen Krebin Alvarez. It's the Krebin Ranch, the old war ranch. And she talked about, her family and the history and how long they've been there, a long time.
Yeah, really.
It was really nice.
Owners have their first settlers.
That's right. That's right. Your family had a ranch on the lower road that Krebins bought. Mike Krebin bought that place. The old keg ranch.
My grandma actually married Jimmy Rohr.
Oh, really?
Yeah. That's how I knew the Rohr ranch.
Oh, you're related.
Oh, yeah.
You're cousins. Not
Yeah,
anymore.
not anymore. Well, thank you.
All right.
Debbie.
Mine's real quick. Last weekend, the Friends of the Fair Bar Service worked the class reunion of
60 through
60.
65.
Yes.
I saw that.
And it was fun to be around them. They were talking history and they have a different focus on what they want out of their reunions. And it was all very personal and engaging. Loved it. And this coming Saturday, we're hosting again, bartending again for the Scarlatus speaker for the Republican Party. I'm sorry.
You can call the Patriots.
The Patriots, thank you very much. And Corey will be bartending. He's going to be one of the bar people with us. But they actually made a movie about this gentleman and the Paris episode on the train.
Oh, that
And
gentleman.
He's the speaker. And they've
He's
sold
the guy that
out.
got the terrorists from
Yes.
killing people.
Yes, so he's going to be speaking. He's the main speaker. And I'm really looking forward to hearing all of the.
Yeah,
Yeah.
speaker.
So that's this Saturday when
When
we're
the
gonna
Elks
be in
are
a
doing-
masquerade.
Yeah.
We'll be working, raising money for the fairground.
Mhm.
Well, we're raising money for the Elks, so.
Yeah. we'll-
Good
Two
causes.
good
both.
Community service, I'll
organizations.
do community service, which is good.
And that's all.
That's it. Thank you. I'll try to keep my report as time sensitive as possible. I hand out, and anybody from the audience wants some of this too. We have numbers from the point in time count. It's actually not official yet till the executive committee votes on it this Thursday. But
Oh,
yeah, if anybody just. anybody want any-
total homeless is 321. Wow. It's gone up.
So back in January, I know a lot of people know that I'm involved in the point in time count, which is counting the homeless in Siskiyou County. I chair the point in time count for 7 counties of the North State. We just had our meeting today and I got reelected to chair the 7 counties of the North State
Congratulations.
for another year.
And condolences.
Yeah,
Yes.
condolences might be more appropriate. But anyways, we did that back in January. As a lot of people know, with the COVID, the restrictions going on, the challenges were very unique this last year. We opened things up barely in time to do the counts. Unfortunately, during that period, the volunteer base came down with COVID that I had through behavioral health, and I lost a lot of my volunteers. We were still able to get a lot of the numbers where our numbers were, because last year we just did the sheltered count. This year we did the unsheltered and sheltered count. And for those who don't know the difference, unsheltered count basically is any individuals experiencing homelessness that's living like under a bridge in a tent, basically are not hooked up to any services. So in other words, a sheltered count would be a individual that would be living in a motel that's funded by, say, behavioral health or through resource center. Sheltered is also an individual that could be living in a trailer that's actually hooked up to services. So in other words, somebody that's living on your property premises that's hooked up to water, sewer, electricity would be classified as sheltered. Are they still homeless? Yes, that's why we still count them. Unsheltered, like I said, is quite a conglomeration of different areas, but the challenges of doing an unsheltered count is actually doing the outreach and getting these individuals and getting the numbers counted. I had a great team this year doing the unsheltered count. South County produced really good. This doesn't break it down in our county-wide. I'm hoping that they'll give me that here soon to be able to break it down as far as between cities and stuff. So we know how many is in Yreka, how many is in Mount Shasta. Had a great volunteer in Mount Shasta that really did a lot of outreaches and did a great job of touching getting the numbers in the unsheltered count. As you can see here on this sheet, it says we had approximately 321 homeless individuals in Siskiyou County. A lot of people say that number is low, and yes, that number is low because that is not getting everybody that is living, like I was just stated, in a trailer that's living on somebody's property, because we have no way of contacting a lot of these individuals and getting those numbers and achieving those numbers. When you have the sheltered count, so these sheltered count ones, and you can't probably see it on your paper very good, in that where it says total homeless in Siskiyou County number 321, and then right below that there's a circle. My copier kind of copied it off kind of dark. It says unsheltered was 148, sheltered was 173. So when you get those numbers as sheltered numbers, a lot of these numbers are achieved from, we're getting them through behavioral health, any of the programs around town. So resource center will get us those numbers, behavioral health will get us those numbers, any organizations that we had around town that have vouchers that were put people up in a motel, those people will be classified as sheltered, and that's where those 173 come from. Like I said, unfortunately, that number actually went down this year because of the volunteer base that we had. Unfortunately got COVID, and a lot of those numbers didn't get counted. We also had, it was one of those double-edged swords. We had the Yreka tribe actually housed a number of these individuals during the point in time count, and didn't want to share the numbers because they thought it was a breach of confidentiality, unfortunately. I did get a bunch of those or some of those numbers, but not all those numbers by no means. But it was good that they did that, because a lot of these individuals would have been out in the cold. So it was great that the Yreka tribe did actually house, I think it was upwards to 40 individuals. There was quite a few individuals that they housed, through motel vouchers and stuff during that time period. So it was neat that they did that, but unfortunately we didn't get a lot of those numbers that we should have. So the sheltered number is down, our unsheltered number is up. Our total number, the 321, is actually up only 10 from 2 years ago. Last year, we can't really count last year because that we didn't do, but only a sheltered count last year. And so we don't get the full scope of the number of homelessness that we're experiencing in Yreka and Siskiyou County. Going down through this, We can go through line by line, male, 172, female, 146, transgender 0, no single gender 2, did not respond 1. Then here's the good one. It's the demographics on this. Chronically homeless. These are the ones that we got to look at some of these. Chronically homeless was 83 individuals. 83 individuals. Now, chronically homeless are individuals that are experiencing homelessness. In this case, a lot of these individuals are experiencing homelessness for over 5 years, believe it or not. And that's where this 83 number is. That is very high when you think about it. How many years that some of these individuals are experiencing homelessness is over 5 years or more. So that's very alarming. Veterans, 11. And that's probably a little low too, to be honest with you. There's a lot of individuals that didn't get surveyed on the veteran side of it. Some of these individuals live kind of off grid and they don't want to be interviewed. I know of 2 of them myself personally that did not get interviewed because they did not want that. They did not want to be talked to. They did not want to be intermingled with of any sort. So there's that number, unfortunately, is low, and they should be. A lot of these veterans can get services to get themselves off the street. They, a lot of them choose not to be recognized and don't want to be in the public's eye, so they live off the grid. Domestic violence victims, 18, which is alarming too. Felony convictions, 57, and those, just so people know too, a lot of these numbers that you're seeing here, when they say felony and when we interview these individuals, this is a volunteer base, so we're not doing a background check on them. So if the 57 individuals that you were reading on saying that they're felony convictions, that could be possibly a lot higher because that's what they will tell us. Same with chronically homeless. When they say, oh, we've been homeless for 5 years or more, that's only the information that they are actually giving us. We're not doing a background. We're not checking on this to be able to say this is true or not. So some of those numbers could be actually higher as far as chronically homeless. Some of those numbers could be actually higher on felony convictions. Another good one is that down there, well, you got COVID-19, 14 individuals, and there was quite a few that I spoke with that, due to COVID, they say that they were homeless. And the reason why, not necessarily they were because they caught COVID, is it was because of the COVID circumstances. They lost some of their resources to be able to be homeless, or be able to have a home, I should say. So they become homeless because of the COVID restrictions, kicked them out of certain areas and lost their opportunity to have a house or a place to stay. Another one is natural disasters. 31 of those individuals, due to natural disasters, a lot of them were displaced because of the fire. Yeah, we did have a number of individuals that were displaced because of fire reasons and whatnot. Youth, this is the one that's going down. We got youth and children. We got 26 youth from 18 to 24, which they classify as youth. And actually, my classification as youth is now anything under 40, but anyways, but yes, 18 to 24, 26 of those, and that is probably actually low too, to be quite honest with you. A lot of these guys, they didn't want to give out the information when you interview them, so, and that they are young. Children under 18, this is the hard one. The children under 18, 61 individuals. Those. Now, people got to realize those 61 individuals that they're talking about aren't necessarily unsheltered. In fact, almost all of those individuals, the 61 individuals that are on this survey, were sheltered individuals. So they were individuals that were living someplace through some type of program of some sort, whether it be through behavioral health or through yes, Youth Empowerment Assist You, through the Resource Center. There's a number of different programs that are out there that house children under 18 that have a place for them to stay. So number of different foster care type things and whatnot that are available to these. So this, even though this is a high number, very, very few of those, if any of those, are unsheltered. If they are, they were probably with a parent out on the street at that point in time, literally. Then you go down here, female and male, female 146 and male 172. So there's, the biggest, definitely the biggest number of them are male, but it's a tough one out there. So there's going to be some more numbers. I'll bring back some more numbers on some more detailed stuff. I'd like to bring back numbers of what we have here in Yreka, so people know in Yreka, and break it down to the demographics of Yreka, Mount Shasta. The biggest numbers are here, obviously, in Yreka because of the resources we have available here. The next biggest number that I was seeing was in Mount Shasta area, then Weed, and then outlying areas and stuff. But we're hoping to get better participation from the Karuk tribe. They're definitely helping out this last year, a number of different levels, and they're definitely want to be involved more in the point in time and help with this homelessness issue. So they're going to be a valuable asset for the future of Yreka on homelessness because they have a lot more resources to utilize for government funding and whatnot for them to do homelessness outreaches and stuff. So I don't know if I know we have a question, so.
Thanks,
Mr. Stalker.
Thanks for giving me the podium. I guess this is my citizen report on the homeless. Not to discount any of the problems with the homeless that are going on. Recently, I don't know how you guys are going to address this one. For lack of a better word, I'll just call the mentally ill or some of the criminal intent that's been going on in 2 facilities that I work at. I've had to personally call the police 4 times in the last week and a half to 2 weeks, and every one of those calls was regarding a homeless person. One gentleman that I brought to you guys' attention that hangs out around our store, he's changed. I used to be able to talk to him. He recently spent 3 days in jail for scaring somebody, had a pick in his hand, he's waving the pick around. I don't know any of the details of that, but he also is getting into verbal altercations with our landlord and threatening him. The other day I watched him trespass on the neighbor across the street from us. And when the neighbor confronted him, he ended up threatening that neighbor with he's going to go get a gun. So that confrontation ended up with him out in the middle of the street, causing a big scene. I have personally evicted him from our property a couple times, mainly because I don't want anybody hanging out there that's going to be violent towards anybody or intimidate anybody. Since I guess our original altercation where I asked him not to come around, he would disappear for a few days and then come back. But now when he comes back, instead of coming back in a friendly way, for example, today I had a customer that I was talking to, which our front door is only a few feet away from that. And here comes this gentleman packing a garden hoe over his shoulders and marching back and forth across my front door, exercising as he's trying to intimidate me, for lack of a better, how else am I going to receive this? So I've just been ignoring him. He seems to go away after a while if I don't talk to him. At Yreka, I've called the police twice because in the middle of the night, somebody was knocking on people's doors. And then the second time was just the other night. I actually didn't call that night because I didn't find out about it till the next morning, but apparently there was some, I assuming they were homeless folks wandering around with flashlights, going around our office, searching around other trailers. I think one of the tenants there did confront them, and from what I understand, that they're a homeless person that was just looking for cigarette butts and anything that they could find. I get complaints from the RV park like I'm supposed to deal with this situation, and I have no ability, authority, other than calling the police. And as we all know, by the time that happens, no offense to the police, but people aren't going to hang out and just wait for somebody to complain or somebody else to show up that's actually going to do something about it. So for lack of any direction, I would like to maybe propose that the city enact a committee of either citizens or maybe city employees, a combination of both, to assess some of the areas where some more serious things are happening. We are next to a motel that is known for drug use. I had to start locking our gates, and I got into a verbal conversation with one of the gentlemen at the motel for doing drug transactions in our back parking lot. I'm getting tired of that. As you guys know, I'm here to help as much as I can, but in the last 4 weeks, either we've been shut down by road construction, 50% enabled by road construction by closing off a lane, or have somebody with mental illness marching out in front of my store scaring people. So it's making it awful difficult for us to stay in business. And it's making it difficult for me to manage a park where at 1 o'clock in the morning, I don't really have any control, but today we had somebody leave and say they're not comfortable there and they're worried for their safety, so they left. So I'm just throwing it out there for, I think there's a certain category of the homelessness that needs to be addressed, not only by solving a problem and finding them homes, but there's an element that has a more criminal mind, less concerning about how they impact or don't impact the city, and they are impacting me. So I'm here to ask for help, figure out what maybe we can do in the future, other than just call the police 3 or 4 times a week. So, open for suggestions. Y'all can get a hold of me anytime you want.
Thank you, Jerry.
Thanks, sir.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Jerry.
So, and comments with that is, yeah, it's been a rough road this last year in conjunction to the law part of it, and that's, I know that Mark's been working on it diligently, and we're trying to work on certain things. One good news I can share that hopefully we'll be able to share for sure, but we got news here at our last meeting that there's a good chance that they're going to be opening up a shelter. With the shelter, they'll also be able to, having this, it'll be able to get some of these individuals that want help, and we can help get them into these areas, So that's going to be a big benefit if we can get that going. Yeah, the county's actually working on a grant of 1.2 million, was it? Or 2?
I'm not sure, but I think we'll have a solid answer in July, if I recall.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So that's what I was going to share that. So hopefully in July, we're going to find out for sure if that grant goes through. If that grant goes through, then yeah, they'll be able to open up a homeless shelter. So that's good news on that aspect. Yeah. We're, trying to work on other things. If we can ever get an urban campsite, I know this is one of the things that Jason's working real hard on. If we can get the urban campsite and some other things going, that we can get some of that stuff fixed.
Yeah, and my personal opinion is that there's just one missing link in the whole equation, and that's right at the beginning of the worst of the worst. And I just happened to run into a lady in our store today. Long story short, found out that she was in a group, I don't remember all the details, that went around to 5 or 7 prisons in Northern California and counseled prisoners, and it was Christian based, but they met him there. And if we're not meeting him there, then we better meet him when they step out the door. And I think I don't understand how or if they are being monitored in any way. And I noticed that faces change daily. I see new people every other day, and some of them don't look good. So I'm not someone to judge, but you have to wonder sometimes, at least for your own security and the safety of the people you care about, if these people are safe to be around. There's got to be a way to address this let's crack down. It's a problem. When people are passing drugs through my gate and my fence and I can't stop it, people are marching out in the street, threatening other people, marching in front of our store, trying to intimidate us. There's a problem.
No, you're so right. And it's a hard battle that our chief of police has been battling.
I wish there was something that we could do as citizens to help, but I know that it's a difficult thing. they're not gonna catch up to that.
These are one of the most, numerous issues that, I had Saturday night, matter of fact, it's what you're talking about. I actually went camping Friday into Saturday, and I got home at midnight on Saturday to find that my wife got addressed by an individual knocking on our door at 11:30 at night, right before I got there, asking for food. And she gave him food, gave this young gal some food, and sent her on her way. But 11:30 at night, we had somebody snooping around, literally around our back door, knocking on our back door at 11:30 at night. So it's yeah.
If I may add something, I am so sorry you're having to deal with this because we're all trying to make a living. And I know personally that I've had a pushing match at my store at the front door twice. And because they want to come in and use the bathroom or see what I have. And I won't do business if it escalates. I will close the store. I don't need that. Don't need it at all.
Yeah, it's tough to do.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's sad. That's why, I guess getting back to this is one small device that we make the state and federal level know that we do have an issue. And unfortunately, it's not recognized enough at the higher levels that it's a big problem all over the United States, mainly in the West Coast. When we have over 50% of the homelessness is in California alone, in the whole United States. And what is it? I think the last statistics was like almost 80% of homelessness is on the West Coast of the whole United States. So you start looking at numbers like that, and obviously things aren't getting addressed in the proper way. Like you said, mental illness is probably in our area, and I can say this because I've interviewed numerous individuals around this area. The mental illness is probably one of the biggest battles that we
And I volunteered to help you with that if you ever need to.
What's that?
I volunteered to help you with the homeless count.
Yes, yeah, we definitely will be needing some more in the future for sure.
January every year, it's the second,
It's actually the last week of January.
last week of
is what it
January.
is. So,
I want to just leave it on this. When the gentleman that was causing the problems out in front of our store, when I called the police on him that day, the officer came and talked to us at the store. And I kind of, let me think here for a second. It might have been my conversation with somebody at the police on the phone. I was asking them, if somebody's a threat, how do we address that? And actually was a police officer. He said, there's nothing we can do unless they actually do something. So you know what that leads to, right? And I understand why they can't do anything. Just because Dan's out in the middle of the street threatening to go get a gun and shoot somebody doesn't mean that he needs to be arrested for that or the police can do anything about that. But it's going to be a sad day when something like that happens.
anytime, just so you're aware, anytime that a situation arises like that, all you need to tell them on the phone is my personal safety is at risk right now and I need help. They have to respond.
If my personal safety is at risk,
That's all.
I'm
you
going
have
to
to say.
protect myself too. You know, it takes a few
No, I'm
minutes.
serious. I'm saying that's,
No, I know.
the
I get
police
it.
department has to respond on anything that's responding.
And I'm not saying they
stated that way.
wouldn't or anything negative about them. I just know that they have a mountain in front of them that they really can't do anything about for the most part. So, thank you guys.
I do think our biggest fail is not protecting our law-abiding citizens that are paying our taxes because they're getting pushed to the back all the time. We should be able to keep our population safe and we're not, and throwing money at the problem is helping.
One thing I could say is actually Governor Newsom is starting to address this situation finally in a positive way, that in the aspect of individuals that are chronically homeless, that are experiencing either mental illness or addiction of any sort. And that's something that's going to get voted on that will address this, that these individuals will have to go through some type of program. So we'll see where that goes in the future. Hopefully that will go someplace because that's what needs to be done. And a lot of these individuals need to go through proper programs to get them clean. Or institutional. We have a number of individuals running around town that Unfortunately, should be in some kind of institution.
Yes.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it's gonna take the upper level of government to realize that. And we see it all the time. Like you said, we're sorry on our front door, literally right at my front door all the time. And it's hard because like I said, our upper officials don't see it. They got blinders on and they don't see it. So it's sad because there's so much of it that can be fixed if they just started addressing this. And like I said, this is just one thing. My goal is to actually start doing a summertime point in time count, which would address homelessness in our area more accurately. And I think, in the future, we'll definitely be seeing more of that. I have the 7 counties of the North State wanting to do that. They want to do a summertime point in time count. But unfortunately, HUD doesn't recognize it. Housing and Urban Development doesn't recognize that.
The summer count, right?
The summertime count. So it could benefit us for certain numbers, but until the Fed and the state starts recognizing it, doing a summertime count is just something that they'd go, oh, great. So that's a bummer, because we're definitely impacted more greatly in this area. Whole Siskiyou County's impacted. Like I said, the rest of the 7 counties of the North State want to do that because they see the same thing. Shasta County, they get impacted more because a lot of them end up migrating from down to LA area and stuff like that. So, and now, especially since the pandemic and the fires and everything else, our numbers have grown. Unfortunately, like I said, with this, it only shows that we've grown 10 in Siskiyou County, but that is not accurate at all, unfortunately. And I hate to say that because I'm the one that's out there, beating the brush and getting those numbers, but it isn't accurate. It's not getting the people that are living in the backwoods. It's not people that are living in a trailer on somebody's property. It's not getting the individual that doesn't want to get interviewed, that we can't count those people. So that's the bummer of it. There is a category that we can count some of those individuals, but we can only count 10% of those individuals that we can't interview, because that's HUD's guidelines. So in other words, we go out there, we're counting, they say there's 321 of them. There's say another 50 of those individuals that didn't want to get interviewed, refused to get interviewed. We can only count 5 of those individuals because we can only count 10% of that. So that's HUD's guidelines, and it's frustrating because there is a lot of them that don't want to get interviewed and they're not getting counted. So our numbers aren't accurate. And there's a lot more to those numbers not getting, being accurate too. So it's kind of frustrating on my part because putting the time that we put into this, trying to get those numbers, and we still don't get all of them. And that's the only way that, that get recognized by HUD, and we're still not getting those numbers. So just think of our little minute number of 321 in Siskiyou County. Think LA County, the thousands of homeless individuals. And Oakland and all the other.
They're never going to hear
San
us.
Francisco.
Oh, yeah. Those are not even remotely getting counted accurately. So there's no way that you have enough volunteers to count all those people. When you're talking a neighborhood in LA County, in LA, downtown LA, the population of the homeless in downtown LA is bigger than the population of Yreka. That's underestimating it. So how do you get a volunteer base to interview all those people? It's impossible. It's physically impossible to interview. They're actually, through the COCs and stuff, we're actually looking at other ways to try to achieve some numbers on this to get more accurate numbers. But that's something we'll hopefully see in the future, because right now it's obviously not working what they're doing and what these numbers are achieving. But in any case,
Wait,
if anybody else has any questions, yes.
no, I don't have a question, but I wanted to say, on a happier note, an organization that's very frequently here present was honored on Saturday. And I just thought you might like to know that Youth Empowerment Network got the Nonprofit of the Year. Shelley Davis, who is the Director of Public Health, and she's also the head nurse for the jail. and then another job. I think she actually got Citizen of the Year. Dustin Brown got the Business of the Year, Dustin Brown Landscaping. And we had a new category this year. It was called Emerging Leader. So this was about the youth, and a young lady, Emerging Leader of the Year by the name of Haley Stedman. She received so it was really nice. There were also, Dr. Art Spencer was the Citizen of the Year for Scott Valley,
All right on.
and Nancy Seitz for Butte Valley. But the Sheriff LaRue was also nominated in my category, and I said to him, Sheriff LaRue, I never in this lifetime thought I'd ever be running against you. He agreed. But yeah, we had like 15 people up there from Shasta Valley that were nominated, so it was quite a bit. But I just wanted you to know that yes,
Yeah.
was the
They're
volunteer nonprofit of the year.
Yeah, she's doing a great job. Like I said, a lot of these youth individuals are, that we see these numbers are through her program, that she finds places for them to stay and what. So she's doing an excellent job on
Yeah.
making sure that these children are getting some place to stay. So great. Any other questions? Not, then we'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you all for coming.
Just that you need to add Jean. She told you there. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Okay. That's what I mean.